Hello and welcome to Tokenverse podcast series, where we bring together creators, blockchain specialists, investors, intellectuals, and experts to brainstorm the potential and future of Web3 technologies. This production is brought to you by DoinGud, an NFT marketplace empowering creators and connecting people who want to do good across the world. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about how social impact organizations can use NFTs. And we're very lucky to have very inspiring guests today, and who are both creative and also they are conscious people who are proactive in the quest of making the world a better place. And I would like to start with Mika Marple, who is artist and writer, but she also used to be art dealer and helped to organize benefit auctions for Planned Parenthood and critical resistance. And I wanted to ask you, Mika, apart from being an artist, why are you here in this podcast where we're talking about social impact organizations and its connections to NFTs? What are the causes that you care about?
That's a great question. Well, as you mentioned, I've helped raise funds for Planned Parenthood, so I'm interested in sort of women's rights and healthcare, and also critical resistance, which is a grassroots-funded prison abolitionist organization based in the States, but works with global coalitions, and that's to dismantle the prison industrial complex. But how I actually got involved with DoinGud is through Kyle Gordon, who I was part of a benefit auction back in March with Beeple, actually. And that was for benefiting Open Earth, which is a carbon accountability technology to basically battle climate change. So social justice and, environmental justice, which I really believe, are closely interconnected. Those are the things I really care about.
And about your artistic endeavors, I look at your Instagram and I found something about tarot. Can you tell us what's this about?
Yeah, the tarot works were the first. So I was a dealer in Los Angeles for most of my 20s. I went to art school, but I wasn't making art during that time. And the tarot works were the first works I made. And that I think had a lot to do with, I think as an art dealer, I got so far removed from the sort of like more spiritual aspects of art. I got so subsumed by the commercial commodity side of things. And it was kind of my way of like re-entering or recapturing some like a more spiritual relationship to art and imagery and self. So that's what that's about. I mean, I really believe in a sort of, going about a kind of like spiritual, emotional sanctity that everyone is entitled to, and all animals and things too.
So your art is inspired by tarot?
Some of it. I mean, I've made a series of tarot about tarot, but I've also done other series. I did a series about Medusa, and that was about, really thinking about, Medusa. What a lot of people don't know is that she was actually a rape victim of Poseidon, who's a god, and it's really like, it's not even a secret. It just is the part of the story that gets the focus. But yeah, she's raped by this god Poseidon or Neptune, and then Neptune's wife Athena, who's also a god, is who turned her into a monster and banished her into a cave. And so she's really like this rape victim that got, blamed for her own victimization and monstrosized for it. So, so that's like a little bit more related to my, kind of Planned Parenthood, women's sort of issues.
Have you read any Madeleine Miller? She wrote a book called Circe. Yeah,
and also the other about Achilles.
Yeah, Achilles. Yeah, the Song of Achilles. I'm about to read this one. Yeah, maybe Medusa could be a good subject for another one of them. Maybe we should suggest to Madeleine that she writes about that now.
Yeah, beautiful writer.
Fantastic. Yeah, and we're very, very lucky to be joined by Bill Carbone, who's also apart from being, correct me if I'm wrong, executive director of Teach Rock organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
Also, Bill is an artist in his own right, but maybe let's start with Teach Rock. Can you tell us what Teach Rock does?
Yeah, sure. So we focus on education, and the concept is that we can improve educational outcomes for all students by getting them engaged where they're interested first, instead of trying to tell them these are the things you have to learn, just learn them and someday you'll use them, or it doesn't matter if you find it interesting, you just have to. Our theory is that popular culture and the arts in particular are super interesting to young people and all people, obviously. Mika, thanks for sharing. I loved everything you just shared. And that by engaging first through the arts and then into subject matter, you can just get all these kids who are possibly sitting in the back of the classroom looking at their phone to look up. So if I tell you that today we're going to talk about economics in downtown New York, a lot of kids aren't going to look up from their phone. But if I start the class by playing a minute of the Ramones and then say, hey, have you heard of CBGB? It's a club that was in the Bowery in New York City. And we start with punk music, we can still get right to that same conversation of what happened in the Bowery in New York City and how did the economics of New York City change in the 1960s and 1970s. But we did it first by playing the Ramones. And at that point, you've got a lot of more kids looking up. And so you can do that on any level, you know, and we do it with all kinds of music. So it's teachrock.org, but we're using hip hop. We're starting to use, I'm really excited right now. We're working on an algebra project that uses Mickey Hart's Planet Drum. So we're working in Brazilian music, we're working in West African music. And so the concept is not just to get kids excited through the music, but to create curriculum in which students of all ethnicities can see themselves too, even if it's a math curriculum. So, and we were founded by Stephen Van Zandt of the E Street Band, and or perhaps you know him as Silvio Dante from The Sopranos. Yeah, so we're reaching almost 50,000 teachers as an open educational resource in the United States. Everything we create is free, and then we work with partner schools all over the country where we actually help them write arts integration into their curriculum maps everywhere.
Fantastic. It sounds like really great organization. I've got good news that we are joined by Nicolene, who is a co-founder of DoinGud, and where she focuses on the connections amongst creators and social impact organizations as well. Nicolene, can you tell us quickly what's the connection of DoinGud with the social impact organizations? Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, there's a big connection actually. Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you for inviting me here, and good to see you, Bill. Nice, Mika. Yeah, DoinGud. Basically, that's the whole purpose of why we started, is to bring connections between different communities and share this abundance of money flow and money creation, especially to make a social impact. Basically, the whole vision, like long term, is that we will at some point like stop to talk about like, oh, social impact or social impact organizations, because it became like a normal thing that anything you do will help others. So that is like the big purpose, or how we'd like to call it, behind the DoinGud. So naturally, social impact organizations at this moment play a very important role.
Great. And Mika, I believe you know a little bit about DoinGud through your connection, Kyle, as you mentioned before. But I was wondering, what is your knowledge of using NFTs in that facilities? When did you first come across the idea of NFTs to start with, maybe?
Yeah. I mean, I got involved with NFTs fairly recently. Last February is when I started. But it's interesting that my experience with NFTs has been almost so much of it has actually been about raising money for nonprofits. I mentioned already the one for Open Earth, the climate change that raised actually 6.6 million for Open Earth. It was all through 8 NFTs, single edition. And then after that, I actually convinced this arts residency, the Headlands, in just north of San Francisco, who've only ever done traditional benefit auctions with physical artworks, to auction off their first NFT, which is one of mine. And, you know, in my experience, like, the traditional art world is very calcified in its ways, and it doesn't, it has a weird tech phobia. So to get this arts organization to get on board with NFTs was pretty cool. Yeah,
absolutely. And Bill, from your perspective, like, do you have an experience? What's Teach Rock experience with NFTs? Are you planning anything, or have you already done anything?
Oh, we haven't done anything yet. I have something in the pipeline, which we're so excited about. So, like I mentioned, we're founded by Steven Van Zandt. Our office is like a mini rock and roll clubhouse museum. We're surrounded by artifacts that traditionally are the kinds of things that are tangible items in auctions. A lot of them would never be in an auction, though, because they represent something deeper. You know, like, you wouldn't auction off a piece of an activism project he did or something. But when I started getting hip to the concept of NFTs, I realized that those things actually have this value that is much more in line with what I see as important in NFTs, which is the story of why they were created, what they mean. And there's all of these things that I can think of that I think are perfect for NFTs. And I'll just quickly give 2 examples. One is that Stephen founded Artists United Against Apartheid in the 1980s. It was 55 marquee musicians who recorded this album, Sun City, which helped inspire the cultural boycott against the South African apartheid government. And it was an early combination of rock and hip hop. It was before Aerosmith and Run DMC did Walk This Way. Stephen had members of Run DMC, Curtis Blow, all these early rappers collaborating with him, little teenage Bono, Bruce Springsteen, soul musicians, to do this anti-apartheid album. And we have this amazing photograph from the video shoot that has about 10 of these people standing next to each other that you would never actually imagine even ever did stand next to each other. But they're all with their fist in the air doing this video to try to bring down apartheid. So that's this thing that we want to release, you know. And for my founder, Stephen, trying to explain to him what an NFT was an interesting project. But that's okay, because he trusts me to if it's a good idea to go for it. And one of the things we have to do constantly, we just have to constantly fundraise. Like, it's just I'm constantly fundraising to keep our work going, right? We can get grants, we can get some revenue from the work we do, but most of it has to be fundraising, and we're asking for money all the time. So this presents this amazing second opportunity, which is to do creative projects with people, as opposed to just asking someone to donate something to me. We can do something together, and they can get something, we can get something, both money, of course, but also I have a great network. They have a great network. They're not the same networks, right? So my head is full of amazing ideas. Just one thing that comes to me is these artists came to me a couple of years ago. They created this set of they look like playing cards, but they're all the the original blues musicians from the United States that really kind of created the music that became the British invasion music later. And there are these beautiful playing cards, and it's a hand-drawn image on one side and information on the back. And 3 years ago, I was like, these are great, but I don't know what to do with these. But now I look at them and I'm like, this is the most amazing NFT set, like, and we can do it together, and they can get something, we can get something. So I love that idea that we can collaborate with a creative person. We can help them, they can help us, and it doesn't become this one-sided, thank you for donating your time, thank you for donating your art, thank you for donating your money. Instead, we're like in a project together that has this awesome outcome for everybody.
It's great that you both are people who are managed to find this amazing use of NFTs and have experience in it. And I wanted to ask Nico now, since she's the co-founder of DoinGud, and there was a conference in Paris 2 weeks ago. It's called ETHSCC conference, and there were quite a few members from DoinGud team there. And there was one of the biggest news coming out from the conference was that Vitalik Buterin, he said that Ethereum needs to expand beyond DeFi, and he also said that NFTs can be a social good, not just casino for rich celebrities. So I wanted Nicolene to comment. What's the word in the NFT community? Has this word was sicked in? What's the reaction?
Yeah, I mean, NFT community is the crypto community, right? I mean, at this moment, the space is still pretty small, and everybody coming together there in Paris really shows the worries that, I mean, not the worries, but like what is the trend and what people are heading towards, right? So now the whole new polished thing is off of the cryptocurrencies. Like, we know that it can bring amazing value, and you can put value on the things that you care about. That's basically mostly it. And then the second question is, okay, so what do we do with it? And as I said before, like it becomes like a natural extension to connect this to social good. And most of the cryptocurrencies and the tokens are created around like a common sense of shared value within a community, right? And in the Ethereum space, this is very much about reinventing society, and of course, with the values of, privacy protection, decentralization, and decentralized power, and that has to do with a social knowledge and a social sense of things. So I'm not so surprised about this trend becoming a real trend, but I'm stoked that Vitalik brought it up like that, because that proves that it's a trend and it's going to set forward even outside of the crypto community. So yeah, it's a good signal.
And do you think that any social impact organizations can benefit from NFTs, or is this solution addressed for particular types of social impact organizations, SIOs?
I mean, in theory, everybody can benefit from it. It's just that sometimes the stories and the explanation about what is NFT, what is the technology, what is it going to be used for, I think these are right now still big barriers for a lot of people that are not from the space or don't have experience in what it means. So as a social organization, it's just a question of recognizing the values of why this technology was built in the first place and matching them to the values why you started your company. And if that matches, then it's just to cross over that barrier to actually learn and get to know the other communities and meet the people behind who is building these technologies. And because in the end it's all humans, I know that technology is a barrier sometimes, or it seems like a very ununderstandable language. You don't know what it means and you feel intimidated, but in the same time it's made by humans like yourself that are sharing values. So yeah, I would say any social organization that is open to learn and to get to know the people behind the tech, I think will be definitely benefiting from this whole NFT movement, which is basically empowering creators. That, as Bill is a very good example of embodiment here. Like actually, that is super overlapping. Like he's like having this organization of tech rock that is actually creating the social impact, but it's also on the creator side very much in touch with all the artists that are bringing up these NFTs. So there's sometimes the boundary is not even that big, you know. It's the same.
And
people.
like me, absolutely. Some phobia. I think used it talking about the art world. As Colleen said, it same applies to SIOs. So I was wondering, Mika, what's your experience of convincing people? As you said, you managed to convince a couple of organizations to actually use NFT technology. How was your experience? How did you manage to do it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And maybe before I fully answer it, I guess I just wanted to add on that, you know, I think we're talking about SIOs, social impact organizations, as if there's something like very different from just regular organizations. And I think we should really, I feel like there's an imperative actually for all organizations, whether they're for-profits or nonprofits, to really think of themselves as social impact organizations, because we're in this moment of environmental and social justice crisis. And it's been very clear. And I think crypto and NFTs, not only like the spirit of the technology, which is like hardwired into its functionality, I think like can benefit companies, but I guess there's also there's like a real use value where they can I don't know how to say this, but like they can make sort of what they do more efficient, or they can access new revenue streams, and that I think can make a regular organization into a sort of social impact organization. And I guess what I'm thinking of, for example, is I have a friend, Sarah Wendell Sherrill, who started a company, Lobis, and it's an asset management company for art collectors. But recently, they've been using NFTs as a way to give back a portion of ownership to of sold work back to the artist, so that the artist is part owner and becomes kind of like a partner, and the incentives are aligned. And that would have been very hard without NFTs. Like NFTs just make things so easy. So like the trackability of it, and like the wallet accounts, you know, like I used to be there, you know, there was a royalty when I was an art dealer. There was some idea that you're supposed to pay artists when work got resold, but it was just so impractical to actually do it that it just didn't get done and it got ignored. But now it's really easy. And so there's kind of no excuse not to do it. And there's actually long-term incentives to do it as we kind of move from like, you know, sort of like shareholder priority capitalism into more of a stakeholder capitalism, where it's not just the owners whose priorities should be, you know, everything orbits around, but it's the owners, the customers, the suppliers, the communities. And NFTs, I think, are the perfect technology for a more like shareholder capitalism model. But anyway, just in regard to the convincing people who are not from the community to adopt it, I was lucky because actually Sarah, who I was just talking about, who owns Lobis, was on the board of this nonprofit. So I had an advocate who's very articulate. But yeah, I don't know. It is hard, really. I think I'm lucky also because this arts nonprofit was in the Bay Area, where in the Bay Area just tends to be a place where like early adoption is encouraged.
Mm.
But you know, the money is people see the like large amounts of money being made and traded, and it's appealing, and it's also just scary in a way to some people. Like it just they're suspicious of the volatility, and they're suspicious of the money, and it just like
I suppose from what you're saying, I'm gathering that the key is to first talk about benefits and then about the scary things like technology and, you know, all the risks or like, you know, things that people are scared about. Bill, for me, go on.
I guess let me just like, I think what really pushed it, I'll just be really fast. What really pushed it over the edge was just telling that like, this is the future basically.
Yeah.
And like, it's kind of whether you like it or not. And, you know, like, if you, like, all your competitors are gonna, you don't want to be the last one to this. And even if you don't do it perfectly, and even if, you know, there's some kind of backlash, like, it's better to get involved and make mistakes than to not get involved at all. Like, that would be the biggest mistake of all.
Yeah, create some FOMO. That's a good strategy always, isn't it?
I mean, I was going to say that if you demonstrate something, then other people will want to copy it. I mean, we all watch each other all the time to see what's working and what's not. And there's definitely the FOMO. I don't know, in the New York area, there's so many nonprofits really competing for the same pool of donations, donor money, and grant support. So if someone has a new idea and does it well, you don't have to convince anyone. You're probably going to wish they didn't see what you did in like in a couple of years, you know? So I think that it's just going to be naturally, I hope that those of us here are that example. I mean, that's my dream, is that we do something really well, that it demonstrates a model that other people are going to say, can you show us how you did that? Because that looks great, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and then go on, Mika.
No, I think just encouraging people that it's okay to like not be an expert before you get involved, or that you don't need to. It's okay if the whole field is so new and so full of imperfections, and you know, just to kind of be gentle with yourself and like be curious as you go into it.
Absolutely. And in your case, Bill, were you the evangelist? Were you the person which brought the idea to Teach Rock organization? How did you convince these guys, if it was you?
Yeah, I mean, I just watched what was happening and had the idea. And I started by trying to explain it, and that didn't go all that well. And in the end, really, the people around me felt like, you know, the big question is, you know, is it legal? Yeah, it's legal. Okay, fine. Well, then I guess if you feel like it's the right move, then give it a whirl. Maybe it'll work, you know? So, because, you know, like I've said a few times, like fundraising is just a constant battle. So if you have a creative idea, people are kind of willing to hear it, because you constantly feel like, well, how am I going to grow? Like we can maintain what we have by doing what we already do. But if we want to grow, there has to be something new. We have to find a new way, you know, because the worst nightmare is to grow and then have some shift in how your revenue works the next year and have to shrink again, you know, hire a person, not be able to keep them, whatever. So it's just, I think people are kind of ready for it. I tried to explain NFT to Steven Van Zandt, our founder, who's a musician, totally smart guy, but also, you know, born in the 50s and gave up halfway through. Said, I don't care if you think it works, just do it. But he didn't really want to go all the way to the end to understanding. But I'll tell you what, if we do a great project and it generates revenue and excitement, he's going to come back and want to know more. So that's cool too.
Fantastic. Nicolene, you deal with a lot of SIOs. What do you tell to these social impact organizations which are quite skeptical? How do you convince them?
Yeah, I really recognize the questions that Bill and Mika already said as well. Like, oh, is it legal or is it like how does it work? It's like tech, and like, and yeah, there are like three things. One of them already mentioned as well. Like, you just need to show that it works, and to show them the whole process and how easy it actually is. Just hold them by the hands and like, look, it's just to fill out this form on board here, and you'll get funding. That you don't need to apply for different funding for government, fill out whole books of writings to apply for it. We really heard that a lot of organizations and also artists are like, they're spending so much of their time applying for funding, and that is almost ridiculous, you know. So all this time applying for funding and adjusting a little bit your agenda to fit in this one or in that one. I mean, that is just a lot of time. So if you can show them that the time to be connected to the creator, to actually receive funds that are independent, there's no restrictions, there's just, you know, money in your account that you can actually use it for your project. I mean, that is pretty powerful stuff. And on the other thing, like about the structures, you need just the language to explain it. You need to compare it to structures that they already built. Like, for example, a cooperative, like that is really built on the same values of shared ownership. Everybody has a benefit, everybody's stakeholder. That is not as different as, for example, a DAO or like maybe like even an NFT that is shared with a multi-sig or like you know, shared as a collective. And if you can make that comparison between structures that they already set in motion and the technology named structures that are not that different, and then you will get, I mean, the success rate is higher if you can compare it to the structures they already have. So yeah, that's the two things that I would mention or would use. I'm still discovering every day, so thank you also for the tips here, so we can use it.
Yeah, and I really like what Mika said, that, you know, there shouldn't be distinction between social impact organization, and basically all organizations should have social impact as one of their targets, right? And so I want to bring it back to the discussion whether is it really the time now with the, you know, introduction of NFTs, do we give the opportunity to all the organizations to actually, you know, do good and kind of change their the raison d'être a bit. Do you think this is the Nicolene, maybe, because like of course we are concentrating on the social impact organizations, but maybe, you know, it's just every organization should be also concentrating on giving back.
Yeah, I think that's just, what Mika already said as well. It's a natural thing that's happening already, and the same as these lines are blurring between creators and social organizations and organizations in itself. Like maybe an artist collective, it's an organization too, and they already creating impact with their art. So the lines will get super blurry. And I still believe that like in this very moment, like social organizations and maybe even social enterprise, that I don't know the business model that they have. They have a lot of different kinds of stakeholders, which is very interesting to look at the business models that they have. Also, a lot of organizations, like really companies, organizations, they cannot even legally accept donations in that sense. That at this moment it's still a donation model, so you need to be able to receive that. But yeah, and I think every organization, and that's the trend as well, like they are worried already about social impact, and part of their one department of their organization is already completely focused on doing that, for example. And there's so much variety in this that we need to draw a line somewhere. But of course, I love to see all these organizations that come from everywhere that are worried about creating social impact. So yeah, for sure.
No, absolutely.
Should happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to add to that, you know, I mean, really, I think the the model now, right, where like the priority is the bottom line for the owners and the making as much money as possible for the owners, that this model has really ruined us. So it really ruined our planet. And it's really, yeah, it's directly related to mass incarceration. Like we have more people imprisoned in America than in our history. There are more, I think there is something like more Black men in prison than there ever were slaves. You know, like things are not going in the great direction. So I think people recognize the need to do things differently. And I remember one of the things that Vitalik talked about was potentially like a social media powered by Ethereum, like a decentralized social media. And I was reading some articles that were just thinking about like, well, what if like Facebook was a DAO or something like that? What if, yeah, like that would be so different, you know? And if Facebook went just this company that was just, you know, I mean, really, like with the data harvesting, it's just like such a perpetrator of wealth inequality. And yeah,
Absolutely.
it's just a radical thought,
sure.
you know, that's like, and it seems it's becoming more mainstream.
It's not so radical.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah,
what's
it
amazing,
should be.
you know, I think
That would be great. That would be the ideal situation if the Facebook was DAO, right?
Yeah.
Actually, they're building that already.
Well,
Yeah,
It's being
yeah,
built, and this. I mean, and
yeah.
even though like the whole decentralized mindset is something that should, I mean, if people start recognizing that that is actually empowering them instead of like one Zuckerberg that is there controlling the data or whatever it is. There's different models as well on that one, of course. But yeah, because the NFTs, I know that it's a craze and it's a trend and there's a lot of money going on, but the values underlying this is that of the what you just mentioned, like to really decentralize and not have the power with one company or one, especially like social media, where actually it belongs to everyone, because without the users it does not even exist. So yeah, there's a lot of projects in the making based on this philosophy, of course. And yeah, it's I hope that it will not be radical anymore, that this will become mainstream. As you said, that would be the best.
Yeah, it seems like we're coming back to the question of the education and convenience again, because as you mentioned that the solutions are here already, it's just the question of people using it, right? And it would be fantastic if everybody just migrated from Facebook to some DAO solution. But how do we make it happen? Bill, so your organization has quite a big reach, I understand. So we were talking about, that we need education and education. Well, all these organizations, not only social impact organizations, but all organizations need to know about the benefits of using NFTs and so on. But also, do we need to educate the audiences about like buying NFTs and so on? Is that something which is also on your agenda? Is that something you think about?
Yeah, I do, because I think, we could launch something and get the news of it out to a pretty big network. But what percentage of that network is going to say, what does that even mean? Or cool, how do I engage with it? Right. So my understanding of the DoinGud platform is that it's actually has like pretty low barrier to entry, which I think is important. And I love what somebody said about making people aware of the fact they don't have to be experts before they come in, right? I think so. Like I didn't investigate anything with crypto or NFTs until also this winter, and at first it was totally overwhelming. It was like trying to read a text in a language that you don't know. But I just kind of persevered, and got in Clubhouse, but I also found people really willing to share, like incredibly willing to kind of help me learn things, point me in cool directions. So, but I think there's a lot of people to whom fear is a real thing, right? The fear of not knowing something is a really powerful force. Like it's like one of the deepest kind of social fears is to be the person in the room that doesn't know what everyone else is talking about. So how do you, just on a really human level, get people past that little hurdle? I think is really important. I think the kind of craze that you talked about got a lot of people to dive in, people that thought about making money, for better or worse. So, how do you get the rest of the people that are kind of like, oh, that's just for these, people that are trying to make a quick buck or whatever? That's that education piece. I think I love talking about it in terms of like the analogies you can make to try to get people to understand the economy, and then also like taking it back to the work we do with students and the curriculum we create. I mean, the way I explained it to my kids was to show them a dollar bill and a $10 bill and say, well, is the $10 one really worth more than the $1 one? And it's like, yeah, it's 10. It's like, well, why? And it's like, because we said it's 10 and it says 10 on it. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So there you go. Like we live in a concept just like this, right? Everything around us is similar. So anytime we can take those, like bring it back to a world that people live in and don't even realize that there's magical thinking holding their whole entire life together all the time, then all of a sudden it just kind of applies to everything.
Yeah, I love this enthusiasm. This is the way to go, obviously. But Mika, you work as an art dealer, and I was wondering, of course, you were a very conscious art dealer because you were involved in lots of proactivity in other fields. But I was wondering how the other art dealers are reacting to, technology such as NFTs and all this concept of, giving to different causes and so on.
Yeah, good question. I sort of see two questions in there. Yeah, one, I guess, just like how is the traditional art world reacting to NFTs? And interestingly, I find like the auction houses, I mean, in some ways, the auction houses led the way. They were I feel like the first ones to really get on board with NFTs. Christie's obviously with Beeple, and then the punks, and then they co-created a platform for some artists to make their own NFTs. But aside, I feel like most of the rest of the traditional art world is actually not engaging. There's still like a lot of it's being written off as a fad. I think the other thing is like the money that supports the art world is so how to say it's a very small group of people that have lots of generational wealth for the most part. So it's like it's doesn't really change on a year-to-year basis. It's kind of been around forever, and I guess it's assumed that it will be around forever. But yeah, so there's not like an impetus to like change because that money is not really going anywhere. Does that make sense?
But don't NFTs create a new type of market for art?
Yes, yeah. And I think the more savvy dealers are recognizing that, and artists too recognize that and go into it. I mean, Damien Hirst made an NFT and Tom Sachs made an NFT. But a lot of fine artists are not, I mean, it's not like, I feel like for us right here in this room, it's like a no-brainer, right? Like this is the future. This is a new market. It's not a no-brainer, I feel like, for a lot of the traditional art world. And yeah, I think they will come around to it. But the art world, in my experience, to the traditional art world is kind of like the last to do things oftentimes. And it's because it's a model that's just been around forever and kind of it's not like technology, you know, like it's not changing every year. The model has been around forever. Paintings are paintings. They've been around for centuries. So it doesn't just pick things up. And sometimes I really appreciate that about the art world, that it's not so quick to pick things up. But this is such a huge culture shift that it will affect all industries. It's just, it's so clear. And yeah, in terms of seeing the opportunity for NFTs to also play a role, like use it as a social good, I don't know. I really don't see, well, there are, I guess, like some people are talking about museums auctioning off NFTs of their works in their collection and using that as a fundraising tool. It's still kind of in the development phase, so things are happening.
Yeah, I think it's still to come. And the last episode we had about the future of NFTs and the mass adoption, the artist which was there said that lots of her colleagues don't actually see how convert art into NFTs, or they don't think that the type of art they're producing would find the audience. So I think, as you said, it will have common stages. Not everybody's convinced, especially art world, which is pretty how to say, not conservative, maybe not snobbish, but sometimes a bit slow to come around, right? And yeah, we're about to say something.
I guess to add on to, it's like being up to date in the NFT community, it does take work, like it's like you have to educate yourself, you have to get involved with the community that doesn't necessarily overlap, and just some people just don't think it's it's not obviously worth the time for them yet.
Absolutely. But Bill, in your case, you managed to find very good ideas for NFT fundraising, like those cards. But then maybe not everybody's so inventive. So what advice do you have for SIOs that have to find, they think like, okay, great, we want to fundraise with NFTs, but like, how do we find the right artwork or content to NFT out there?
I guess I would say like let go of the concept you have of art, right? Like I think Mika made a really good point about art museums kind of being late to the game, and instead think about maybe go back with a child's mind. Like to me, like Pokemon cards are a great example, right? Like nobody thought Pokemon cards could ever be worth $10,000, right? But or Magic cards or any of these different things, or baseball cards when I was a kid, right? Like so, what is it that communicates to people about those things, right? And what's communicating when I look at how people are relating to NFTs? I'm a person that sees analogies everywhere. So like for me, music is everything. I think like, when early hip hop started, nobody had ever thought of the turntable as a musical instrument. But within 10 years, the turntable was a musical instrument, right? It wasn't designed to be a musical instrument. Somebody saw possibilities in it and made it happen. Same thing with the sampler, same thing with laptops. Like the generation that my kids are part of think of the laptop as a viable music instrument, where my generation still pretty much sees it as a means to an end, right? So I would just encourage people to like let go of their kind of the way they see everything now and try to go back into imagining what the experience somebody's going to have with something is, like why they would want it and what it does for them. And to me, I mean, I'm no expert, so I don't know, but that's certainly what I feel like. What are you communicating to somebody with this thing that you're hoping they'll invest in, right? Like, so what about it is pulling their heartstrings? If it's a piece of traditional art, it's because I want it to go there and you to see it and to feel something and to say something about me when you see it. But if it's not that, well, then what is it? What is it serving for those people?
Fantastic. I can see people on the chat are actually asking about fundraising with NFTs for nonprofits. Maybe, Nicolene, you can tell us how actually SIOs can use DoinGud platform. Like, imagine if I got a SIO for, I don't know, for some special cause, and I want to come to DoinGud because I also, I want to gather some funds. What are the options?
Well, the options is to sign up with us. Basically, what we are searching for is like a very diversified social organizations, like a database, basically a part of the community. And we are really making an effort to have them cross SDGs, which are the Sustainable Development Goals. So not everything goes directed at, for example, only to climate change or only to gender equation, but like to really spread out the impact over.
Mm. Oh, so we didn't get that.
And number 3.
So we don't know how DoinGud want to spread out the causes. So for the moment, that's going to remain the mystery. Okay, Nicolene. So you were just saying how DoinGud is planning to spread out the causes of its activities.
Exactly. So if you sign up with the platform, you will be asked in what SDG are you operating, or what SDGs, because normally the Sustainable Development Goals you are addressing more than one. And then when the creators actually upload the artwork on the platform, they are the ones that chooses the social organizations that they actually want to donate to or want to give to. And they also set the percentage of the income that will go to the social organization. So they can set like between a minimum of 5% until like 95%. They can set the percentage whatever they want. So you create like a connection between the creator and the social organization. And we stimulate that as well across, like, because it's not just a marketplace, it's also like a social media platform. So it's an ecosystem where people actually make connections together. So until we have the social media layer there, we have tools like the Discord, where we have specific channel that the creators and the social organizations can get to know each other and chat to each other and see what maybe.
So hopefully DoinGud will become this Facebook on DAO that we're talking about, right?
Sounds nice.
I was wondering if you have any questions to each other before we wrap up this session. Yeah?
I had a question for Bill. I was just curious. So for the NFTs that you're making, do you think you'll reach, do you think they'll sell to people that have never supported T-Rock before, or you think it will go to someone that's been a supporter? Or how are you targeting your promotion of it?
It's such a good question, and I wish I had like a really detailed answer, but we're gonna find out. I think it's such a new world for us. I'm really curious if there are any really interested NFT people kind of lurking in our midst, and we just don't know yet. My biggest fear is that we just get no interest, despite the fact, like, because I'm used to having a lever to pull through these kind of known musical people that generate a certain amount of interest no matter what. But this is such a brave new world. Like, could it be that, there's no ripples when the stone hits the pond? That's my nightmare. So it's such a new space that I just don't really know what's going to happen. And I have to be really honest, and I'm like, I'm unsure. One of the things that attracted me to DoinGud when I met Kyle was that we were about to just go rogue and just do this on our own. And I met Kyle and I thought, this makes so much more sense. This is a community. They are doing what we want to do too. So we should join a community instead of trying to, blaze a trail?
Yeah, I guess just as like from my personal experience, so the NFT for the Headlands, which is the traditional arts nonprofit artist residency organization, and my NFT was their first NFT that they auctioned. It went to an NFT collector that I actually brought, who had actually never supported the organization before, but was also a traditional art collector and understood the value of arts nonprofits and, sort of the traditional art world. And yeah, so it was cool for them because they got a new sort of, a new person in their fundraising network.
Yes, it's
so
great.
You went and recruited that person to make sure they knew about what was happening?
Yes. Yeah, correct. Because it was on Foundation. It was before DoinGud launched. Otherwise, I would have used DoinGud. But I knew Foundation just didn't have the band. Like, I knew that I needed to play an active role in it and target NFT collectors specifically for my piece. And did get some bidding from like someone who was involved with the Headlands, but yeah, I guess that's my advice, is to like try to find NFT collectors that have maybe bought similar things or care about, similar things.
That's great advice. And so, is it okay if I just keep asking?
Yeah.
How did you find that person just by doing research about who's buying these things, or did you find it because you're in an arts network and there was a trail?
It was a collector who had bought previous NFTs of mine. So yeah, it was someone I knew beforehand already. But I do think, but my first NFTs just sold because I didn't know anyone in the space and someone just liked them. But I think you can, you can do your own research and, follow people on Twitter and, reach out to them, or just kind of make sure that people that would be interested know that it's happening.
Thank you.
This is great. I don't think we can hear Nicolene. Nicolene, we cannot hear you. But I think it's great that, in this marriage between NFTs and, SIOs, SIOs can have more patrons, and then kind of artists can also have more of a market for their stuff. And this is what Manu said in our last conversation to my friend, who said that she's a bit worried that she cannot get enough public for the art that they're doing. And he said, like, maybe if you attach it to some kind of social impact, some kind of social cause, then the kind of the audience will come for it. And as Nicolene is rightly pointing out, it's all about community. So this is also what in that case DoinGud is facilitating. But I see we're running out of time, so I'd like to thank you all. Nicolene is saying the social layer for collectors and SIOs and creators to connect. Exactly. On this positive note, I would like to thank you all for coming here and participating and bringing all this amazing information to our podcast. Next week, same time and same day, we're going to have a conversation about taxation in NFT world. So we would like to invite everyone to come and tune into that. But for right now, thank you once more, Mike, Bill, and Nicolene. You were great, and thank you so much. Have a great week. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Great convo.
Ciao. Bye-bye.